Who knew Barbarian X Warlock makes one of the tankiest multi-classes in the game? Hey everyone, I'm Ronan and welcome to the channel. I beat Honor Mode a little bit ago first try, and now I'm on a mission to make a solo build for every origin character. Based off my latest polls from my community tab, Will is up next, and I am going to be utilizing another set of polls that I had a little bit ago to determine his build as well. This is a fun Warlock X Barbarian multi-class that is very tanky that I certainly think you'll enjoy. If you're new here, like and subscribe, comment what you want to see next. I do have a few request videos I will be making, so stay tuned. And Suicide Squash, thank you for being a member of my channel. If you want shadows like they have, and additional perks, then hit join down below. The concept of this build is to utilize Force Conduit stacks from the Skin Burster Halberd weapon to make yourself very tanky. Force Conduit is a stacking buff on yourself that will reduce damage you take on top of all other damage negation. So things like Rage from Barbarians, which reduce physical damage, will stack with Force Conduit. Combine that with any type of retaliation armor and gear, and the Warlock armor ability spell that you get, you have a great multi-class that allows you to set up a ton of retaliation damage to enemies, all while you take very little to zero damage in return. Combine that with the ability to do AoE damage and CC enemies at the same time with Tigerheart Barbarian, Reverberation, and more, and you have a super tank that does great damage, CC, and quite honestly is really hard to kill. Alright guys, although this is my intended solo build for Will, I did want to point out two other races that will be very useful for this build. That way if you want to utilize it as a Dark Urge or a custom character, you can. Those two races, in my opinion, the number one, Half Orc. Keep in mind, because we are using a Barbarian mix here, any race technically can be useful, but I do think Half Orc is the best because of Savage attacks, getting that extra crit die, which you will crit more often than not when you start attacking with advantage compared to any other races, and having that extra damage with crit die is very nice. And you have Relentless Endurance, so if you would normally be downed, instead you have 1 HP, so it's pretty much like a get out of jail free card, which is very nice. I also really like the Wood Elf for the extra movement. The extra 5 feet of movement can make or break certain scenarios in Honor Mode, which is also very useful. High Elves, I think, are completely useless here. Getting that cantrip isn't going to do anything in combat whatsoever, since you will be raging and you can't cast spells while raging. So do keep that in mind. However, you can use any race you want. Those are just my two favorites. I think the drawers are also very useful, but realistically, pick whatever you want. Alright guys, so I realized in post that my recording for stats and feats and things like that was really glitchy, so instead of trying to redo everything and re-edit, I'm just going to re-record it now to save myself some time later on. This is not my normal format. So this class is easy to multi-class with. It's just 8 levels Warlock, 4 levels Barbarian. If you would like to respec at some point in time to give yourself access to medium armor, you would want to start out as a Barbarian. However, it's not needed because the gear you utilize throughout majority of the game is going to be gear that simply isn't considered armor anyway. So let's go ahead and break it down. So obviously when you rage, you do extra damage with physical weapons and you take 50% reduced damage from physical attacks. Your starting stats are on screen. I don't utilize the Hag's Hair, but you can if you wish. So level 2 Barbarian, you get Savage Attack. This is great because you have advantage, so it will roll 2 dice, and whichever one is higher is the one it will actually utilize for its hit chance. This makes your crit chance higher despite not having any crit stacking gear. Level 3 Barbarian, this is the subclass that you want, Wild Heart. This gives you Speak to Animals for free, which is nice to have, but it's really mainly for the Bestial Heart, although I do think there is a use case for all of these in some type of build video. Today we're going Tiger Heart. Mainly for Tiger's Bloodlust, you can hit 3 enemies at once. I tried testing it out to see if I could hit 4 enemies at once. The 4th enemy can get hit from AoE damage from any procs and things like that from like Call of the Week, but they won't actually get hit from the actual weapon, so keep that in mind. When you have Rage Tiger Heart as well, you actually get 15 feet increased jump distance, which is great because our strength for this build is really low. And naturally, your first feat will be ASI, get that Charisma to 18 and that Dexterity to 16. Now, we're not actually going to be continuing the Barbarian path. We're going to be multi-classing here. I do recommend your first 5 levels to be Warlock so you can get your extra attack with Warlock with Pact of the Blade first. But this is for if you did want to respec later on. So let's go ahead and go down the Warlock tree here. So our starting cantrip, surprisingly enough, will be Minor Illusion and Mage Hand once you do get the Skin Burster, because that's when the build comes together pretty much at the end of Act 1. This is mainly to have utility, and so Minor Illusion, you'll see in the combat section, you can set up people to be in a close scenario to AoE them down right away. Now when it comes to your subclass, although I do think the Fiend is useful, we're going Great Old One here, and this will give you a chance to basically fear enemies in an AoE whenever you crit. There's some additional bonuses we'll talk about later. But our spells here starting out, realistically, because when you rage, you can't utilize any spells during combat except for 2 spells that you have access to. Your armor spell, if you cast it before you're in combat, will still work. This is the retaliation damage I talked about earlier. It gives you temporary hit points and 5 cold damage. Once you upcast this to level 4, it gives you 20 HP additional and will do 20 damage to the enemy when they hit you. And then of course, Hellish Rebuke. This is nice because this will do damage and you can cast it as a reaction even while raging. So you have a lot of retaliation damage you can do spell wise on top of armor as well. When it comes to your evocations here, Devil Sight is the only one that you must have because this makes you immune to blindness. Anything else is realistically going to be up to you, so pick whatever you want. Your additional spells, because you can't cast these in combat, pick whatever you want. You don't always have to rage, but I definitely recommend it if you want to be tanky. So your Pact boon here, we are going Pact of the Blade. This is what allows your weapons to scale with charisma, and at level 5 Warlock, it's what gives you extra attack as a Warlock as well. Alright, our second feat is either going to be ASI or Great Weapon Master. Pick whatever one you wish. I'm going ASI to get charisma to 20. Like I mentioned earlier, level 5 you get Deepened Pact. So as a Warlock, this is what gives you the extra attack. Alright, so level 6 Warlock, you get a really cool subclass feature here. This ward is actually amazing. You can utilize this whenever you want to make sure you don't get hit by like a critical attack or anything like that. And it gives you automatic advantage when your attack against an enemy. This is very useful, especially for bosses. Alright, and your final level, whether it's your level 4 Barbarian or level 8 Warlock, depending on how you level up, gets your final feat. So this final feat will be either ASI if you didn't already get max charisma, or it's going to be Great Weapon Master because we want our two-hander to hit as hard as possible. And this helps as additional damage to your AoE attacks since the Tigerheart Barbarian reduces the damage you do by half whenever you do the AoE attack. Alright guys, when it comes to gear, it is very simple because most of the gear you utilize is from Acts 1 and partly Acts 2. And of course, there's some minor upgrades in Act 3. So the main point of this build is to use the Skin Burster for AoE damage to give yourself Force Conduit, which then makes you take less damage per turn, and you can do AoE force damage as well. Because you gain basically Blade Ward whenever you rage, so all melee damage is reduced by 50%, on top of stacking with Force Conduit, you are extremely tanky when it comes to any physical damage. Now, of course, I have mine enchanted from the Drakethroat Glaive to give it an extra weapon enchant and extra 1d4 lightning damage. And in case you're wondering how to do that, I will showcase it on screen now. But the way this works, I mean, between the cleave that you have or the Tigerheart attack for AoE cleave you can do on demand every turn, the damage is just phenomenal. Because you can make enemies bleed with your Tigerheart attack, you can combine that with the Gloves of Belligerent Skies, so that lightning damage that's on my weapon, well, this will apply Reverberation. Anytime you apply Reverberation or any other type of debuff to the enemy, Boots of Stormy Clamor gives them 2 turns of Reverberation. So now you have that plus the bleed, so you're already stacking up really high debuffs on the enemy. The go-to chest is going to be from Act 1, the Graceful Cloth, just to give you a little bit of higher dexterity. I like using the Flesh Melter's Cloak, just to have enemies take 1d4 acid damage when they attack me. If you don't want to utilize this, feel free to utilize something else like Cloak of Protection or any other cloak that you wish, it doesn't really matter. I like the Diadem of Arcane Synergy because anytime you inflict the condition, you gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns, which is going to give you a stacking damage buff equal to your spellcasting modifier, with it being 20 charisma for this build. That gives you 5 extra damage on all your attacks, which is very strong. The rings I like using are Ring of Free Action, just so I can't be paralyzed or restrained since my wisdom is pretty low. So this is a great way to nullify any type of like hold on me via magic. And I like the Crusher's rings just for the extra movement speed. Realistically though, you can replace these with other rings that you wish. That's just my go-to for early on. The necklace, of course, is the Broodmother's Revenge. So whenever you're healed, you add 1d6 poison damage to your weapon. This is actually a tooltip error. It's only 1d4. So you'll do extra poison damage. You can proc this from any spell that someone heals on your target. So any spell you take that heals you will proc this, as well as using potions. And then once you get to Act 3, that's when you could replace one of your rings with Ring Regeneration. So like, for example, instead of having the extra movement, I can use Ring of Regeneration, and at the start of every turn, I will get healed for 1d4, which will then proc Broodmother's Revenge. Your bow is all about utility here. Bow of Awareness in Act 1 just gives you a little bit of extra initiative. Of course, once you get to Act 3, you can utilize the Hellrider's Longbow for even more initiative, or if you prefer to have extra crit, the Deadshot is also very useful. Now, when it comes to Act 3 gear, of course, there are other things you may want to utilize. So the Bone Spike Garb obviously is very, very useful. This does extra temporary hit points whenever you rage. All incoming damage is reduced by 2, which stacks with everything else we talked about earlier. And the exoskeleton damage is based on your constitution modifier. So when you're hit, you do piercing damage back to the enemy. I like combining that with the Flesh Melter's Cloak. I like using the Birthright in Act 3. This gives you +2 charisma, making you have 22. And if you go to use the mirror, you can get the 24 charisma, which is fantastic. Just makes your attacks even stronger since we are using the good old Bind Pact weapon, which makes any weapon scale with charisma that you utilize here. Now, of course, if you were to utilize the Amulet of Greater Health, you can see how much higher my HP goes up. It goes up significantly. I'm at 145. My AC is 19 now, which is ridiculous. You can see this actually has 6 because it's based off of my Constitution modifier. Throw in the Bone Spike Boots for even more AC, extra jump distance kind of thing. Very, very nice. And you kind of have a really steady combo, and you can still utilize the Gloves of Belligerent Skies if you wish with this build, and still replace the boots if you want to. Other useful helms would be the Bone Spike Helmet. So whenever you rage, enemies have to make a Wisdom saving throw or they take psychic damage. That's okay. The main reason you would utilize this if you're going for single target damage, that menacing attack melee just adds an extra 4 damage, which is your proficiency bonus at max level. And you can possibly frighten your enemy, which is nice to have, but you can use it once per turn. Looks a little derpy though. I don't like the way it looks. I think it looks kind of bad. And of course you have the Horns of the Berserker, so if you want extra attack rolls and necrotic damage to your enemies, you could use that as well. But I do think the Birthright Helm in Act 3 or the Diadem of Arcane Synergy are the go-to helmets here. Other than that, this is the build. You just utilize pretty much all the gear we talked about and just do AoE damage and burst enemies down. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, for this combat showcase, it's mainly gears from Act 1 and 2. The only difference is I am utilizing gear you can buy as soon as you get to Act 3. So the Bone Spike Garb, the Birthright Helm, the Ring Regeneration, and Hellrider Longbow. These are all things you buy pretty much as soon as you get to Act 3, which I am utilizing. I think the Hellrider Longbow, the extra initiative it gives, outweighs the extra crit. Though if you are playing with a group, then maybe the crit will be better overall. Now, make sure you go ahead and get your armor up before you start combat, since you can't use that once you start the rage. You can go ahead and short rest if you want to get your little Warlock spell slot back here. And I want to use Minor Illusion Cantrip and try to get these guys in a good spot where I can hit everyone at once, you know? Alright, so I messed that up. I was supposed to use the potion, but let's try it again. So get all these guys set up here. I'm going to hit as many as possible. Alright, so that's a really good spot. I might actually be able to hit 4 people. We won't even worry about the speed potion right now. Can I hit 4 at once? so close. Maybe if I get right here, I can. All right, so it looks like 3 is going to be the max I can get right now, which is fine. Some cases you'll get more, some cases you won't. We're going to try to hit all 3 with your cleave, which is on a short rest, because you want as many force conduit stacks as possible at the start of combat. All right, so I hit all 3 of them. You can see combat started, and because combat did start, I then got the Broodmother's Revenge to proc. Now this is where the speed potion would have been useful, because then I could have attacked again. But I'm already at 5 force conduit stacks already, so I'm attacking 3 enemies. So let's go ahead and just use the Tiger Heart here to get rage. And we will end our turn. He's not attacking me because he can't do damage to me. I have too many stacks. So he's trying to use trip attack, which I don't want to fall prone because that is bad. They'll all have advantage on their attack rolls. So let's go ahead and use a reaction here and make him have disadvantage. All right, now that it's my turn, we're going to go ahead and just get some massive AoE damage out on these enemies. So let's go ahead and use our Tiger's Bloodlust here. I can hit all 3 of them in front of me. We are going to use Reckless Attack because our hit chance with Great Weapon Master all in is lowered and I don't have the Blust statue on this file. So we're going to go ahead and use that to hit as many as we can. You can see the damage isn't quite as high. If you take a look, like that was averaging, I think, around 15 to 16 a hit because your attack is halved when you use Tiger's Bloodlust attack. But if you use the other helmet, the Diadem of Arcane Synergy, you would add +5 to all your melee damage for that because it would give you equal to your charisma modifier in damage. So we're going to go ahead and attack again. Let's attack these guys now so they bleed. I did get a crit on that guy. He retaliated against me. You can see he did 0 damage to me because of all the Force Conduit stacks, but he took 20 cold damage on top of the piercing damage from my chest piece. So now let's go ahead and use the Great Weapon Master all in. Look at all these guys. Because I did crit, I also sent this guy to be frightened because of the Warlock subclass we chose. So it's just a great combination of CC on top of everything else in between. We're going to see which one we have the highest attack chance on. It's going to be you, and I don't want her to heal anyway. I missed. Ouch, that sucks. But look at this. So he hit me. Not only did he take damage from attacking me and I took 0, we're going to use Hellish Rebuke and kill him. And although I am raging, because that's a reaction, you can use Hellish Rebuke as a reaction to do damage to the enemy. Look at all that damage I'm doing. Just making them bleed out. They're doing no damage to me. I absolutely love it. Right, and now you can see these guys again, like I mentioned earlier, because I crit, they were frightened. So they are already just going to have disadvantage on their attack rolls against me. They're bleeding, the reverberation. Like, I just love this combination here. So we are going to kill her this time. Wow, I missed again. I guess I should have taken off Great Weapon Master all in. But this is when having the Bless statue or just Bless in general from your team would really come in handy. Alright, so she's going to use Crusader's Mantle. I'm going to use my Backlash ability from my Illithid powers instead. Alright, and look, I'm just getting healed. I still have my max temporary HP points because they never broke it yet. It's actually insane. Let's go ahead and just attack with Reckless Attack right now to get her. But she's gone, which means I can now use Great Weapon Master all in on this target here. But I do want to make him bleed still, so I could use Tiger's Bloodlust, but it won't finish him. If we attack him regularly, though, he should die regardless. So let's go ahead and just finish him then. So he's down. So now we just have this guy who hasn't done anything to us at all this entire combat, and we'll just end our turn next to him. Alright, and you can see every turn I keep getting healed from my ring, which then gives me the poison damage when I attack. So we will make him bleed with Lacerate instead. Let's go ahead and crit him, and he's gone. And that's basically how you play the build, guys. Like, you get so many forced conduit stacks that it's just unreal. Combining that in terms with all the other damage resistances you have with your Bone Spike Garb, in combination with being a Barbarian, so when you rage, you take 50% less physical damage, you just hit so damn hard. If you want a little bit of more damage compared to what you've seen in this video for your AoE attack, which is reduced by 50%, which is why the damage wasn't as high, use the Diadem of Arcane Synergy to just give you that extra +5 attack in combination with the Great Weapon Master All In, the extra 10 afterwards. It will definitely add up. But that's the build. If you like it, like and subscribe, comment down below what you want to see next, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.